Lots of common sense I want to hear from you today, particularly in relation to the families of the Nottingham attack victims, accusing NHS doctors of having blood on their hands over those failings in the treatment of the killer of their children. Valdo Calocane was a paranoid schizophrenic. He was supposedly caring the community. There was no care. There wasn't a community. He was just again and again and again raised as a threat to others and to himself, and nothing was done. He failed to take his medication again and again. It was suspected or even known that he wasn't taking his medication, but nothing was done. He was taken into care, released again and again, and he was able to kill 3 people, 19-year-old students Barnaby Webber and Grace O'Malley Kumar, and also a caretaker and father, Ian Coates. Those deaths could have been prevented. It is as simple as that. Do you agree? Does the NHS have blood on its hands? I want to know your reaction to what their family has had to say, particularly if you saw the panorama last night. It was an unusually good one. It wasn't like a newsreel like they normally are. But also that Care Quality Commission review report out today. Absolutely damning about the care or lack of it that this man received. I want to know your reaction. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. You can send a WhatsApp to the same number. You can text us on 87222. You can tweet us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs 1 standard network rate message. And if you're watching on our YouTube page, which I'd love it if you'd have a look at, if you've not had a look at it, you can message us for free and we will find those messages and get those on air. Right, delighted to welcome today the former Conservative government advisor, Claire Pearsall, who joins us. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Looking very summery, looking very, yeah, you know.
It's summertime.
It is summertime. Yes. That's why we've had a hottest day.
Shock horror.
I see the Guardian front page today is sort of bleating on about them, you know, record number of deaths, you know, from a heat wave, you know, hundreds of thousands of people die in heat wave across Europe. It's like, yeah, you know what? And 9 times that die in the cold. And do you know what would stop people dying in a heat wave? I'm going to throw this out there. Cheap fossil fuels. That means that people can afford air conditioning for their homes.
Well, I mean, who'd have thought it? Air conditioning, cooling down, people live longer.
Who would have thought it? I mean, it's just extraordinary. They're going to keep on with this agenda as long as they can. Anyway, we have air conditioning in here. I'm going to say this in the most mature way I can. No. If you are suffering from it, we do have air conditioning here. There's so much to talk about here. Let's start with this report into the abject failing in terms of so-called. I mean, like, care is not even a word that it's not even valid. That word about the psychotic killer Valdo Calocane. I mean, it is just extraordinary. Nottinghamshire and Leicestershire police forces have also been criticised by the families, but crucially, it's the NHS and the mental health teams. One doctor even warned, and this was in the medical records, which the family who interviewed for Panorama last night of Valdo Calocane, the brother and the mother, who was a nurse, it transpires, they were not aware of any of this. But again, you know, he was a grown man. They weren't able to get hold of his medical records. One doctor actually warned in the notes, wrote it down, that if this man wasn't treated, he could end up killing someone. That was written down in black and white. And guess what? He ended up killing 3 people, narrowly, 3 others escaped with their lives. He ploughed a stolen van into them in June last year. What do you make of it?
I mean, it's just it shouldn't shock us, really, should it? Because we've heard time after time that mental health services don't share the information, that this chap in particular was also just struck off the list, though he was discharged from service because he didn't get back in touch with them. Well, if you're a paranoid schizophrenic and you're known to be a paranoid schizophrenic, why would they not keep a closer eye and find out why he hadn't been in touch?
And again and again, I mean, genuinely, I could do the entire 3 hours just reading out the litany of failures. But again and again and again, a member of staff, the mental health team, would highlight they believe that he is not taking his medication. He would lie and say, no, he was no longer hearing voices. He was a paranoid schizophrenic. He heard voices. He told his family again and again. There was an incident with a fellow flatmate of his, where the flatmate, he actually, you know, basically got him in that arm lock and wouldn't let him go, wouldn't wouldn't let them leave the flat. And the young man had the sense, would you say, to the other flatmate, please video this so we've got proper evidence of it. And they were really worried about him. They worried about he was going to harm himself more than anyone else. Another incident where he broke into a woman's home where she was so scared of him, she jumped out of a very high first-floor window and suffered severe spinal injuries. Imagine how scared you must be to jump, onto concrete outside because you just think, that's my best chance of getting out of here alive. So again and again, it wasn't just sort of out of the blue, this stuff. No. Now, one of the things I find interesting is the family, and particularly the family of Grace O'Malley-Coomer, they have refused to understand, to read the letter that was sent by the brother of Valdo Calocane. I mean, he's not responsible for this crime. They also, to a certain extent, feel like they'd lost their family member, though, he is behind bars in a mental institution. They say he's now on his medication. The mother said in the panorama she's now got her son back, effectively, because they can actually, he's actually the same person again. But they've refused to read it. They say, look, the mental health services, everyone's being blamed apart from them. But realistically, I've spoken to so many families when they've had a loved one who's done something awful. They didn't know. Apparently, they didn't even know when the brother got a phone call in the morning when after Barnaby and Grace had been murdered. Colt said they weren't murdered. They were murdered. That he had no idea where he even was.
But isn't that always the way when somebody becomes an adult? The family are not allowed to have that information unless the person wishes to share it with them. So they don't know. And I think the families are in a really tough position because they know there's a problem. They keep flagging up. No one really listens to them and nobody tells them what the outcome is going to be. So they're in the dark over all of this. And I can understand the victims' families not wanting to read a letter. I think it's probably still too soon for them. And I don't blame them.
You've had your kid killed. You're entitled to be as angry as you want.
As long as you want.
I'm always in awe of those parents who can say, I forgive my child's killer. I'll forgive you when you're under my patio, mate. Sorry. No, I'm sorry. I just don't think I'm that kind of person. I wish I was, but I'm not.
No, and I agree, and I couldn't be that gracious, and that's exactly what they have been the whole way through. I wish I had that kind of strength. I'd be angry for the rest of my life.
I mean, it's a killer to lose. Parents fight. It is the worst thing that could happen to you. I mean, we're told always, aren't we, that lessons will be learned. I mean, I don't know how many times. Just don't know how many times that we've been told this. I mean, again and again, whatever the situation, whether it's mental health, whether it's something going on in NHS with physical health, whether it's Lucy Letby or anything, whether it's the police, lessons will be learned. Social services, lessons will be learned. They never are. Why do you think they aren't? You've worked at the heart of government. You've worked closely with the civil servant. You've probably got a better idea of the mindset. But why would anybody whose job it is to keep not just that person safe but the community safe from somebody who is clearly a paranoid schizophrenic and a danger, has already proven themselves to be a danger to other people? By the way, not prosecuted for any of this stuff. This is the extraordinary thing. Again, bad decision making. Why would you not think, I think this person needs to be in a mental institution and locked away?
Because I think it's a structural problem. You aren't going to get to any kind of meaningful change unless you change the structure of what's going on.
What do you mean by structure?
Because no service ever speaks to each other. You can move out of one area into another and it's almost as if you're a clean record all over again.
But why did those people... I understand that when someone leaves one area, like we've had that with police, where, a rapist, people got information and that's not passed on. Again, people... Computers, they work. You can search things, but I don't really understand why a lot of this doesn't come down to personal decision making.
Well, it should, and I think people are
taking responsibility,
concerned for their own jobs. I think there's an awful lot of that. There's also a lot of back covering. Perhaps somebody didn't pass a message on that could have been critical to this. We don't know that, but I think that everybody takes into account they must do their little piece, hand it over to somebody else, and then they sort of shrug their shoulders.
And here's my thing. And if you've had a Zoom meeting about it, or you've CC'd everyone an email, you're covered.
And that's And that's the attitude.
This is my thing. I think everything comes down to personal responsibility. In private sector and public sector, it is you need to take ownership. You need to give people ownership of their decisions, and they need to live with the consequences of it. So they should be praised when they take good decisions. And yeah, you're going to take some wrong decisions. I mean, like medics, the best doctor in the world will still have patients who die. We've got to understand you can't be perfect all the time. But people need like parole boards. Yeah, we absolutely think this guy who fantasises about having sex with children is not a risk to children. Okay, then allow him to babysit your kids. No, I'm sorry, but I've always said, live with the consequences of the decision you're making, because it seems to me a lot of people working in these sectors, and I think this is in the private sector as well, they can go, well, I've made the decision, well, I did it with the best information I had at the time, and then nothing happens. I'm not saying I want people to be punished, but there needs to be consequences if people aren't very good at their jobs.
And they hide behind the fact, oh, well, it was the information I had. And to be honest, in the private sector, if you made bad decisions time after time, you wouldn't be in your job.
You say that. I've worked in plenty of companies where a lot of people make very bad decisions again and again. But, to a certain extent, well, then the shareholders, it's up to the boss of the shareholders to make decisions.
Yeah, but there is a consequence there. But I think in civil service, not quite as easy.
No consequences at all.